Hello! Today we are doing a video that I've had on my idea list for a really long time, and I figured since it's spooky season and some people are trying to read some Agatha Christie right now, this might be a good time to do it. So we are going to talk about what I think are the best twists in Christie, and here's how we're going to structure this for those of you looking for more and less spoilers. If you don't want to know if there's a twist at all in a Christie book, I don't think that this is a good video for you, because I am going to tell you 10 titles that I do think contain good Christie twists, 5 of which are sort of like iconic Christie twists that people talk about and remember, 5 of which I just think are particularly surprising and well executed solutions to her mysteries. So if you don't want to know that I think anything has any kind of twistiness to it, then stop here. Okay, so those people are gone. Now, what I'm going to do first is go through the titles and tell you if it's just like an iconic twist or if I think it's a particularly well executed solution. So we'll start by just giving you the titles. I'm not going to talk about what the twist is at all. So if you just want a list of things that are potentially good places to go with Christie, if you're looking for kind of more of a twisty book from her, then you can just watch that and then be on your way. Once I've listed them all out, then I'm going to get into specific discussions about what in the twist I think is particularly iconic or why I picked it for sort of this top 10-ish kind of list. Oh, and it should go without saying, but I have to say these just based on comments I get on some of my Christie videos that do bigger numbers. Obviously this is subjective. Obviously this is my opinion. It's all good. Let's just keep it copacetic in the comments. Oh, and I should mention that the scope of this is going to be full novels, so no plays or short stories or novellas, and only under her Christie name, not the West Macott, though I don't really think of West Macott as twisty. And break. So let's start with just the list. So in terms of the top 5 most iconic Christie twists, the top 5 I picked were Endless Night, Crooked House, and Then There Were None, Murder on the Orient Express, and The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Now, we could put Death on the Nile, I think, was sort of the one I was kind of bopping around with, but those are the top 5 sort of most iconic ones. And of those, 3 of them are standalones, and then Murder on the Orient Express and The Murder of Roger Ackroyd are both Poirot books. I don't think you need to have read previous Poirot books to read these. They work pretty well as standalones. And then in terms of the 5 that I think just have really twisty solutions to them, even if they're not quite as iconic, the ones I picked out are almost all Poirot's, but first we have Lord Edgware Dies, then Hercule Poirot's Christmas, After the Funeral, Appointment with Death, and then the one I don't have in physical form and is also not a Poirot is The Pale Horse. So those are the 10 that I'm going to talk a little bit more about here in a second. So if you don't want any spoilers about what happens in those twists, leave now, but hopefully that gives you a few places that you could go if what you value in a mystery thriller is just like some kind of shocking twist, reveal, whatever. Are you gone? Okay, we're about to talk about spoilers, so if you don't want to hear about spoilers, now's your time to go. You sure? Okay, you've had time to scramble for the remote or the pause button or whatever. Okay, let's start with the most iconic ones, and I'll just go through kind of what about them is iconic and why I picked them. So if I were gonna say one that is like the most iconic twist in Christie, I would say And Then There Were None, just because you have somebody who you think is dead is actually the killer, and you end the book thinking that they all died, so how could any one of them have been the killer? And then you get admittedly somewhat of a contrivance with the little note at a bottle situation, but this is sort of like, how could any of them have done it because they're all dead? And then one of them, it turns out, found a way to do it and then die. So that I think is the most iconic, followed by sort of the opposite solution, which is also, I think, one of the most iconic, which is Murder on the Orient Express, which is they all did it. Like they all colluded together to do it. And this is one where you're sitting there like, good God, like all of them have such strong motives. Why are they all together? And eventually you start to think like, oh, they probably all did this together. And it sort of builds from there. So I think those are probably the 2 most iconic. Well, and then I would say number 3. Yeah, number 3 I would say is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, because the big innovation of this particular book is finding out that you have an unreliable narrator and the narrator done it. So that I think is also pretty iconic and one, maybe not the first to do it, but definitely the most popular early version of this being the twist, which I actually guessed when I was reading and therefore was a little not as wowed as I think some people are. But it must have been a solution I'd encountered somewhere before and therefore, you know, had some inkling of it being possible. The other one that I don't have in physical form here that has basically the same kind of twist is Endless Night, because you find out that the dude is crazy. And I say that, I know that's a pejorative. I don't like Endless Night. I know everybody loves it. I find it very melodramatic and overwrought. Everybody loves it. Same basic twist as Murder of Roger Ackroyd. There's that. And then I was between Death on the Nile and Crooked House. I decided to go for Crooked House because I know I was really shocked when I first read this that Christie goes there and makes a child the killer. Is this the only time that happens? Right now, that's the only one that's coming to mind. Somebody, I'm sure, will correct me if there's another one I'm not thinking of. But I remember at the time when I read this just being like, oh, damn, like, okay, you went there, Agatha. Way to go. I think this, or the reason Death on the Nile, I think is also a pretty iconic one. But I think, I don't know, you kind of know that that has to be the solution in Death on the Nile. You just don't know quite how that will be the solution. So anyway, those are the sort of iconic ones. Then in terms of ones that I just think are particularly well executed. So Lord Edgware dies, and actually after the funeral, both I think have kind of the same twist-ish. And I just think that they're really well executed, which both of these are essentially like costuming as the way that something happens. So in this one, you have kind of a double cross because Jane Wilkinson is swapping places with the famed American actress who is a mimic or an impressionist. She switches places with her at this dinner. So then like early on when that's found out, suspicion falls on her, but then that's sort of like a double blind, and then it ends up actually being what happened. I'm not explaining it well. If you've read the book, you know. But basically this one has very much like a lot to do with costuming and somebody imitating someone else. And then after the funeral, I feel like this is such a well executed, like this one is truly more of a twisty twist. This one I feel like is a twisty twist, but also just overall this is such a underrated and well constructed Christie, because I just think that the whole like what's her face secretly being bonkers and being able to imitate the sort of eccentric aunt of the family, being her companion and being able to do that imitation, and then what gives her away is that she was practicing it in the mirror, so it's reversed, and that's what Poirot picks up on. I think that's such an interesting concept, and I think it is harder to pull off visually than it is in a book. I mean, both of these, I think that's the case. But it's harder, I think, to pull it off in a visual form, but in a book form, it works really, really well. And I do love the David Suchet adaptation of this particular one. Also has big you-know-what dude from Shame in it. What is that guy's name? Fassbender in an incestuous relationship with his cousin. That's my favorite of the David Suchet adaptations because it just gets pretty bonkers in there. But anyway, I think both of these have similar twists and they're both really, really well executed in my opinion. Very satisfying to the reader. The Pale Horse I picked because it was one of the last Christies I've read, and the more you read Christie, the better you get at spotting her twists. Like just you have more experience with the kinds of things that she does. And so it becomes harder to be fooled because she's really good at sort of reworking the same, I don't know, like 10 ideas in a bunch of different permutations and making it still exciting, but you can start to predict them a little bit after a while. However, in The Pale Horse, she did a really good job of like convincing me that maybe this was gonna end up being a supernatural one, which she throws in every once in a while. It's pretty unusual, but like Mystery of the Blue Train has a little bit of that. And then it ends up just being this rando guy. And once it ends up getting explained, it totally makes sense. But like she did a successful bait and switch with me where I was convinced it was either paranormal or I thought it was, I'm trying to remember what plot line I thought it was, but she basically went for the least suspicious person, and I think I was expecting it was going to be that his wife, point of view dude's wife, like is coming back. And I think I thought it was going to be like a swapped identity kind of solution, and it wasn't really that. It was a different route she went down, and it had like kind of a conspiracy element to it. Yeah, anyway, I just wasn't expecting her to do that. Another one that I think is a really good sort of like least likely person solution is Appointment with Death, because it ends up being random politician lady, and you just would not suspect her at all. Like, she doesn't seem to have a motive, but she gets recognized, and this is very, like, this plays into the psychology of the characters really well. This is another, I think, underrated Christie, because this one is just really, the setting is so good, it's really tense, and then the solution, once it's explained, it makes complete sense, but I think she does a really good job of obfuscating what the solution to this one is. So yeah, I think this one is another very good twist. And I guess that was a Poirot, by the way. And then finally, I was between this and the ABC murders, because I guess that one could have been an iconic one too, but I decided to go with this one. Hercule Poirot's Christmas, just because the whole concept of the policeman did it, I think is really cool. And it's a locked room mystery, so that's always kind of twisty and exciting to figure out, like, how did this work? And then who did it is so surprising in terms of you would never expect a policeman to be the one who done it. So I think this is another very satisfying twisty one. So those are my picks for the top 10 Twist and Christie. As you could tell, even just from me saying I had a couple of ones that I thought about subbing in, clearly this is something that's up for debate. This is just my list and what I would recommend, but definitely feel free to leave recommendations in the comments for people if they are looking for a particularly twisty Christie, beyond what we've already discussed. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you are having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon.